Acosta, now you remember, Jim Acosta is this loudmouth, this blowhard, who went off on the fact that that Sean Spicer stopped for a while having cameras at the White House press briefings. Why? Because Sean Acosta, when you put a camera on him, suddenly becomes the Sean Acosta Show. You know, the Jim Acosta Show. You know, suddenly it's the Jim Acosta Show. And he asked what had to be one of the stupidest questions I have ever seen anybody ask in a White House briefing. And that's saying something. This is cut number 3. What's the problem with this rational immigration program?
First of all, right now, it's a requirement that to be naturalized, you have to speak English. So the notion that speaking English wouldn't be a part of our immigration systems would be actually very ahistorical. Secondly, I don't want to get off into a whole thing about history here, but the Statue of Liberty is a symbol of liberty enlightening the world. It's a symbol of American liberty lighting the world. The poem that you're referring to that was added later is not actually part of the original Statue of Liberty, but more fundamentally, the history, but more fundamentally,
you're saying
the
that
history,
that does not represent.
I'm saying that the notion. I'm saying the notion that I'm saying the notion.
I'm sorry.
No,
Jim,
let me ask you a question.
That sounds like some National Park revisionism.
No,
the Statue of Liberty has always been a beacon of hope to the world for people to send people to this country, and they're not always going to speak English, Stephen.
So we played that out of order, but what he starts out by doing, and I won't go back and play it, what he starts out by doing is he starts out by reading the Emma Lazarus poem, "Give me your poor, your tie, you know, your seething mass," right? So, and Miller schools him on the fact, now look, it's a nice poem. It really is. It's a nice poem. And Miller schools him on the fact that it was put on afterwards. The poem was written to raise money, I think, for the pedestal of the Statue of Liberty. The Statue of Liberty was originally created as a sign of the Enlightenment that linked France and America. The ideas of liberty, that's why it's called the Statue of Liberty, the idea of liberty that links France and America, and that was one of the reasons we supported each other in our revolutions and all this stuff. So he is quoting it as if it's the Constitution. And Miller proceeds, first he tells him the truth, that it was put on afterwards. But the point about it is we don't set it's a nice poem. We don't set our laws by poems. So now Miller says, well, what would be the right Emma Lazarus poem law to have? This is cut number 4.
In 1970, when we let in 300,000 people a year, was that violating or not violating the Statue of Liberty law of the land? In the 1990s, when it was 500,000 a year, was it violating or not violating the Statue of Liberty law of the land?
Was it violating?
When it was 700,000 a year. No, tell me what years. Tell me what years meet Jim Acosta's definition of the Statue of Liberty poem law of the land.
Would you ask the poem? So Acosta now looks like an idiot. And even on left-wing media, like even on the Scarborough show, they're saying that Acosta made a fool of himself. But they're saying, well, Miller was rude. And Miller, to me, just did what he had to do. I mean, this is absurd that this guy comes in and he's going to make this a debate. And you can hear he won't even let Miller finish a sentence. How can you learn anything if you don't listen, right? If you're a reporter, you're trying to get information. You're not schooling anybody. Miller knows more in that little finger of his about immigration than Acosta will ever know. He knows more about the policies of immigration. So this goes on and it gets worse and worse and worse. And Acosta starts to complain about the fact that they want English speakers. And he says, well, you can hear him. He says, well, if you have English speakers, you'll only have people from Australia and Canada. And Miller just rips him to pieces. Listen to this.
This whole notion of, well, they could learn, they have to learn English before they get to the United States. Are we just going to bring in people from Great Britain and Australia?
Jim, actually, I have to honestly say, I am shocked at your statement that you think that only people from Great Britain and Australia would know English. It reveals your cosmopolitan bias to a shocking degree that in your mind, this is an amazing moment that you think only people from Great Britain or Australia would speak English is so insulting to millions of hardworking immigrants who do speak English from all over the world. Jim, have you honestly never met an immigrant from another country who speaks English outside of Great Britain and Australia? Is that your personal experience?
And just so you know, though, I mean, Acosta goes on afterwards, after he's just destroyed, and he goes on, and this is the report he files. I mean, this is cut number 7. So just so you know, this is basically, he is representing CNN, this blowhard, this guy who thinks the Emma Lazarus poem is it's a sentimental poem, is going to set our immigration policy, and that we don't have a right to have the same kinds of protections for our country that Canada and Australia does. This is the way he goes on and reports this on CNN. This is, remember, a theoretically objective news guy on CNN, which keeps telling us it's not fake news. Here's Jim Acosta's report on this.
I think at times this White House has an unhealthy fixation on what I call the 3 M's, the Mexicans, the Muslims, and the media. Their policies tend to be crafted around bashing one of those 3 groups, and we just see it time and again. And today on immigration, what the White House is essentially saying in a wink and a dog whistle to some of these battleground states that they won is that immigrants coming in from Latin America are taking your jobs. Well, if immigration is not the reason why the factory closed in Pittsburgh or the coal mine was shut down in West Virginia.
So that's report. And just, I'm going to finish this because I'm not going to talk about this all day, but I just want to finish this thing by just to prove to you that this is not just one rogue guy who should be fired, which he should. I mean, if you want to be the most respected name in news, you don't have a guy like that filing reports like this and shouting at people in the newsroom when the guy is just announcing a policy. You know, you oppose the policy. Too bad. Nobody cares what you think. You know, just report the news. But just so you know that this level of thought is basically endemic to CNN. Here is Chris Cuomo, who must be the stupidest man on TV, who's not Don Lemon, and Don Lemon is the stupidest man on TV, who's not Chris Cuomo. Here is Chris Cuomo on the Statue of Liberty and what it means for America. And let me just begin. Well, let's play it first. Go ahead.
Theater of the absurd to the side for a moment and get back to the main point. The words, the poem was added later, Miller said. The words being the signature promise of this country from the poem New Colossus by Emma Lazarus. Of course they were added later. The pedestal on which the words were placed came after the gift of the statue. But that's not what Miller was really trying to brush aside. He was trying to brush aside their significance. This isn't about culling illegal immigration or bad hombres, as the president liked to say. This is about changing not just how many, but who gets to come in legally. Restrictions that would brush aside America's greatest strength, the diversity of people who have sacrificed to come here with nothing except the passion of purpose to make better lives and to make this country great. They're not just words added later. They are a solemn vow that was supposed to endure forever.
It's a solemn vow that's supposed to endure forever. It's the signature promise of this country. By the way, this is the same guy who said that the Constitution doesn't protect speech that he thinks is hateful, okay? So the Constitution is a living document. We can interpret that any way we want. But Emma Lazarus's poem is like written, it's literally written in stone, and we have to obey this poem, and that's how... Unbelievable. And they wonder why when Donald Trump blows up at them and, is rude and unkind, they wonder why everybody sits there kind of nodding going, yup, yup. All right.